377 and beyond. The center's cautious stand keeps the focus only on the need to decriminalize gay sex. There is finally good reason to believe that consensual gay sex may once again be decriminalized. The ongoing hearing before a 5-judge Constitution bench of the Supreme Court indicates that there is now a better appreciation of the need for equal constitutional protection to all individuals without any discrimination than was the case in 2013, when a 2-member bench declined to read down Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, as homosexuals constituted only a minuscule minority. The center's stand was believed to be critical when the current hearing began this month. The union government is cautiously supporting the cause, but it has stopped short of taking a categorical position. By leaving it to the Supreme Court's wisdom to decide on the constitutionality of Section 377, the center has signaled it is not opposed to the decriminalization of same-sex relationships as long as these are limited to consensual acts between adults in private. At the same time, its position is hedged against the possibility that the Constitution bench, currently reconsidering the court's 2013 judgment upholding the validity of Section 377, may venture into other rights for the LGBTQs relating to marriage and inheritance. In the event of the court going into issues and rights that are not slated for reconsideration, it wants to file a detailed counter-affidavit spelling out its stand. Observations by the judges of the bench, including the Chief Justice of India, indicate that it is now focusing only on Section 377. However, at least one judge has observed that the question involved was not only one relating to sex, but the right to life and the right to privacy of those in such relationships. The current hearing is taking place against the backdrop of a 9-member bench's verdict last year in Justice K.S. Puttaswamy v. Union of India, which said the right to privacy and the protection of sexual orientation lie at the core of the fundamental rights guaranteed by Articles 14, 15 and 21 of the Constitution. In other words, the whole gamut of rights flowing from the decriminalization of homosexual relationships must be examined, if not now, then at least as and when they arise. Obviously worried about the reactions of some religious and conservative sections if homosexuality is decriminalized, the center has sought to dissuade the court from going into other related rights. Its apprehension, perhaps, is that once homosexuality is no more an offense, it may lead to demands to legalize same-sex marriages and inheritance by survivorship among gay partners. While the current focus is on the urgent need to overturn the retrograde judgment of 2013 in Suresh Kumar Kaushal, the extension of constitutional rights to citizens, irrespective of gender and sexual orientation, is long overdue. Moonshine. India-South Korea ties have drifted too long. Political ownership of them will help. That South Korean President Moon Jae-in undertook a 4-day visit to India this week, when there is hectic diplomacy over the Korean peninsula, speaks of his commitment to improving bilateral ties. In fact, during his election campaign last year he had promised to raise bilateral ties to the level of South Korea's relations with what it calls the major powers, the US, Russia, China and Japan. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has often said he sees South Korea as a significant partner for India, and had traveled to Seoul. But despite the personal touch and ambitions to align India's Act East policy with Korea's new Southern policy, ties have drifted for lack of focus. Trade, at $20 billion, is a fraction of the potential, given that India and South Korea are Asia's 3rd and 4th largest economies. This figure has been a cause for worry, as the two countries had hit the $20 billion mark in 2011 after the signing of the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. The large trade deficit in South Korea's favor has led India to be wary of further opening up. In turn, Korean companies cite problems in doing business in India, despite the special Korea Plus desk set up by the Prime Minister's office in 2015. Tourism between the two countries has always been low, and strategically both New Delhi and Seoul are preoccupied with tensions in their immediate neighborhoods and ties with the big world powers than with each other. On Mr. Moon's watch, this may change. Both Mr. Modi and he exuded a sense of purpose, and there is a clear road map on converging interests. Agreement to invoke the early harvest clause in the 2010 CEPA will allow both to do away with tariffs in 11 areas, benefiting Indian seafood exporters and food processing units, as well as South Korean petrochemical companies. The inauguration of Samsung's biggest mobile factory in Noida will bring investment and create jobs in India. More Korean companies should be persuaded to invest by projecting the counter-narrative to the failed bid by the steel company POSCO to set up its plant in Odisha. Much will depend on negotiations on the Regional Free Trade Agreement, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. On the strategic front, India has asserted its place as a stakeholder in the Korean peace process, while South Korea has for the first time shown an interest in talking about an Indo-Pacific policy. In the short term, a symbolic token towards shared interests will be seen in a joint capacity building program in Afghanistan. At a time when U.S. foreign policy is capricious and unpredictable, and China is making purposeful moves towards global domination, it is important that the South Korea-India partnership grows and consolidates to contribute to stability in the region. A difficult campaign. In the run-up to the election, Pakistan's judiciary and military are showing their hand. Democracy has always been fragile in Pakistan. It was only in 2013 that a transfer of power from one democratically elected government to another was realized for the first time. As the country heads for the second such transfer, with a general election scheduled for July 25th, the celebration is muted, overshadowed by a series of dramatic developments. Last week, former Prime Minister and Pakistan Muslim League leader Nawaz Sharif was sentenced to 10 years in prison in a corruption case involving undeclared property in London. The case, first outed in the Panama Papers, has seen Mr. Sharif disqualified from office and then barred from holding a party position in the ruling PMLN after being held guilty by the Supreme Court. The charges are serious, even for a country plagued by corruption in high places. But many Pakistanis, including Mr. Sharif's critics, believe the anti-corruption court was overzealous, and even motivated by those in the deep state unhappy with his recent run as prime minister. In an unusual move, military and intelligence officers had been dispatched to cities around the world to gather as much evidence as possible against him. Mr. Sharif, who has been sentenced along with his daughter and son-in-law, accuses the opposition parties led by Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf of having received support from the establishment to hold massive rallies calling for his ouster. This was a role Mr. Sharif himself played in the 1990s, when he was the politician favored by Pakistan's all-powerful establishment. While the attempt to neutralize Mr. Sharif's political role in Pakistan's future is the biggest story in this campaign, it is by no means the only destabilizing trend. In the past few weeks, the media have battled harassment, with copies of the Dawn banned from cantonments. Journalists have faced death threats. This week, the Wami National Party leader Arun Bailur became the second member of his family to be assassinated, pointing to a systematic targeting of politicians who don't adhere to an Islamist line or kowtow to the military. The atmosphere is by no means conducive to the conduct of a free and fair election and has been further vitiated by terrorist groups being mainstreamed in the polity. The most notable such group is the Al-Agradiri. Sectarian groups and radical Islamist ideology are being tolerated by the military, despite harsh strictures on terror funding from the Financial Action Task Force, and an international grey listing that threatens to cripple the economy. The elections will serve as one marker for the democratic process. The larger struggle in Pakistan for the deepening of democracy will continue. High on rhetoric. Punjab's drug menace demands an all-out war that goes beyond empty gestures. It has taken Punjab Chief Minister Captain Amarinder Singh over a year and a half to launch his much-anticipated war on drugs. This he did on July 4th by ordering mandatory drug tests for all government employees, including the police. While this is welcome, even if elated, it is a very small and insubstantial measure towards curbing the pervasive drug menace. For someone who promised to wipe out drugs from the state within a month of being elected, the conduct of annual drug tests on some 3.25 lakh employees is a piece of tokenism. More steps are needed, less missteps, too. The decision of the Punjab cabinet to recommend the death penalty to drug peddlers is an example of the latter. Capital punishment is abhorrent. Given that there is evidence that suggests it is also no guarantee of deterrent crime, this is more of an empty signal. What is required is a comprehensive war on drugs fought on several fronts, including interventions in the community to spread awareness and foster a culture against the use of drugs. The challenges faced by the state are huge. Estimates vary, but by some accounts as many as two-thirds of all households in Punjab have a drug addict in their midst. Punjab's prisons are overcrowded with drug users and peddlers, and its streets and farms witness the easy availability of narcotics and opiates. Last year, the government arrested 18,977 peddlers and treated some 2 lakh addicts. The sheer extent of the problem suggests it is more than just a few profiteers that have been responsible for causing this menace or helping to sustain it. Something of this scale required a wide network, the well-oiled and smoothly run machinery that has the secret support and collaboration of at least a few of those who work in government. Given the geography, the drugs, whether it is opium or heroin, make an easy and assisted entrance into Punjab from the Golden Crescent. Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and synthetic drugs are thought to come in via Himachal Pradesh. That means those guarding Punjab's 553-kilometer border with Pakistan must take serious steps to plug the inflow. The Central Security Forces obviously beyond the control of Amrinder Singh. Therefore, security planners in New Delhi have to make sure that the border is properly barred to the flow of narcotic substances. This is a national problem, as a substantial portion of the drugs that land in Punjab make their way to the rest of the country. Given the links between drugs and terror, this poses a national security threat. Then there are the politicians. The previous Akali Dehli BJP alliance had also promised to drain Punjab's vast drug swamp. The political class has a critical role to play in winning the war on drugs. It is not enough that politicians merely line up to have themselves tested for drugs to win political brownie points. They need to put the state and the nation above self-serving political ends and agree that this battle must be fought in concrete ways, going beyond photo ops and sound bites.